Welcome back, Heroes of the Horde and Adventures of the Alliance. Crack your drinks, because come hell or high water, by the end of this topic, we are finishing vanilla, and I do not care how long it takes.
Yeah, but fair warning, it took a really long time. So we're gonna split this video into two parts.
And as I mentioned last time, when it comes to ending an epic fantasy story, there's really only one way to do it properly. The Siege of Helm's Deep, the Battle of Hogwarts, the destruction of the Death Star, Captain America finally saying, "Assemble," at the end of Endgame. And of course, the one that rises above all others, Jimmy Neutron and his friends fighting Poltra and the Yokians to save their parents. The moment in the narrative when there's nothing left to do but charge in, heart-pounding, friends at your side, ready to put it all on the line as the enemy charges against you. Moments that give you goosebumps even recalling them just from memory. World of Warcraft gives us about 5 of these every 2 years, and in the 3-year cycle of vanilla, they gave us 7.
Debatably more than that.
The topic of the video today is raids, which if you really look back, might be the only thing that WoW has consistently delivered on from start to finish. It's the meat and potatoes of the game, and while the leveling experiences will always be solid, it doesn't really matter how many scenarios or warfronts or island expeditions or mage towers or delves they introduce. Endgame raiding content will always be at the core of this story and of this game. And as each subsequent expansion and patch builds the narrative around these raids, they inevitably become the heart of Warcraft. The funny thing about vanilla, though, is that it doesn't seem to realize that fact yet. Before BC, Blizzard's tool for justifying your subscription price was patches and patches alone. Like dungeons, raids weren't the centerpiece of the story that they are today. They were honestly just bigger dungeons. But even from the first, the magic of running around with 40 people trying to accomplish a single goal online was so intoxicating that it became our MMO staple and hallmark. The decision to shift to expansion-based products was a good one long term, and it gave structure to the course of the narrative and allowed the game to tell larger, overarching plots, which in turn allowed us to spend more time with specific settings and characters, and that in turn increased our investment. But Vanilla's patch cycle, while it definitely forged some core memories, it had a progression that was kind of all over the place. It makes for a whirlwind of cascading conflicts, but as an upside, the scattered progression allowed Warcraft to rapidly expand its world-building toolkit. It's actually kind of funny that, in retrospect, if you look at the course charted from classic to modern retail, the patches in vanilla sort of make up a mini preview showcase of all the things to come. Old gods, elementals, the scourge, the trolls, even the nightmare, all arcs that won't conclude for decades to come, begin in Vanilla's patch cycle. For our purposes, we've managed to boil down the raids and patches of Vanilla to 7 critical experiences. The first, which we feel is the ultimate culmination of our story's 1.0 patch,
Which, by the way, we decided to title The Drums of War. I don't think that ever came up.
will take place in Alterac Valley.
Part 1, Finale, The Drums of War.
Picking up where we left off, the Knights of the Lost Ashes and the Thunderlord Militia are sent to the mountains of the fallen kingdom of Alterac, pursuing their unfinished business with the characters Nalus and Kazakis. But when they arrive, they discover that the mounting tensions resulting from the battles of Tol Barad, Ashara Crater, Warsong Gulch, and Arathi Basin have brought the Horde and the Alliance to a boiling point. The Frostwolf clan, who have dwelt within the icy mountains since their banishment from the Old Horde, are in open war with the dwarves of the Stormpike expedition, who've come to explore and map the region of the Fallen Kingdom for the Alliance. Neither side will admit to who struck first, but by the time of our arrival, all hope of a diplomatic solution has flown, air and gone. The Ash Knights meet first with Grumble Grimhammer, who leads them into the valley, and to the new dwarven stronghold of Dun Baldar, to meet with the Stormpikes, while the Thunderslayers meet with Usha Eyegouge, who shows them the path to Frostwolf Village. Our first raid runs parallel from here, as the battleground itself often does. The Alliance and the Horde hurl themselves in a battle against one another, claiming territory, bombing bunkers, and burning watchtowers. The Knights capture Iron Deep Mine, driving out the Iron Deep Trogs and their leader, Morlock, leaving bandits behind to manage their supply lines, while the Slayers, after exterminating the White Whisker Kobolds and their leader, Taskmaster Snivel, claim the Coldtooth Mines and leave Shaka behind to keep the peons in line. Dexter and the Baron then take to the skies, with wing commanders Mulverick and Eichmann, respectively, leading aerial raids and clearing a path for their guildmates below. The Ash Knights manage to battle their way into the Iceblood Garrison, where they defeat the great Frostwolf warrior Captain Galvangar, while the Thunderslayers slaughter their way into the Stonehearth Outpost and bring down the Mage Captain, Belinda Stonehearth. Theta retreats at the behest of Archdruid Renfarrell to assist her with a ritual that might use the Force itself to turn the tides of battle, while Kel is called upon by Primalist Thurloga to aid her in using the blood of the battlefield in order to commune with the elements of the valley. As the two summoners work their ritual, in the no man's land of the Field of Strife, Jorn Gavinrad and Magus Coldeye meet for the first time in battle, as the paladin and the shaman strike at one another. A duel that begins in hatred, with each parry and with each renewed advance, slowly ebbs into one of respect. Malice is lost in the thrill of a fight with a worthy foe, and the two both mark one another multiple times before their duel is interrupted by the completion of the rituals. The towering Ancient of War, Ivis the Forest Lord, and the colossal Ice Elemental, Lokalar the Ice Lord, rise like two titans upon the field of strife. The clash is explosive, and all sense of strategy and decorum is lost as the valley itself rises up to take arms in the fight. The two armies, no longer able to engage with one another properly in the wake of the clash, both charge towards the homes of their opponent, and as the forces close in, the twin final encounters of the raid begin. The Ash Knights charge Frostwolf Keep, and are met by the blind old Farseer, Drekthar, chieftain of the Frostwolves, alongside his two wolves, Duros and Drakan.
Named in honor of Thrall's parents, in case you didn't pick that up.
And at the same time, the Thunderslayers storm the halls of the Stormpike to face off against General Vandar Stormpike, a classic example of a dwarven mountain king, accompanied only by his massive balls. Canonically, both the generals, and I think the captains, survived this battle, but it goes down in history as one of the bloodier conflicts in the modern Horde and Alliance relations. Stormpike's position is that the orcs are little better than beasts and deserve to be slaughtered, while Drekthar requests that the dwarves surrender, fully intending to execute them all regardless of their response. With both of the caustic leaders taken out of commission, the intensity of the battle begins to wane. Our two guilds, now given some room to breathe, set out into the valley to track down Nalus and Kazakis respectively. The knights track Nalus to the Wildpaw Knolls and their leader Grimtooth, while the Slayers find Kazakis among the Winter Axe trolls, selling blood potions to their leader Korak. The parties, each unaware of the other, follow their mark to a secret meeting between the two, and both sides take the opportunity to stage an ambush and are caught off guard by the presence of the other. In the confusion, Nalus takes the opportunity to escape, but Kazakis laughs in the face of the mortals, and at last reveals his true form, Kazakisan, the Black Dragon. Both guilds attack the warped dragon, while at the same time striking at each other's flanks. The chaos of the battle causes an avalanche that destroys the village of both the gnolls and the trolls.
And this part did actually happen. Check the patch notes.
But ultimately, Kazakis is brought down and seemingly slain. With no time to rest, the two guilds beat a hasty retreat for fear of what the other party might do. The battle for Alterac comes to a close, and both guilds take a moment to appreciate some well-earned rest.
Which we all know is not going to last very long.
Facts. As all of this has been going on, some of you might have noticed the conspicuous absence of the comic book characters we spent so much time rewriting in the last video and building into the battleground stories. As the Horde and the Alliance and our guildies rage against one another in Alterac, the respective parties of Varian and Medan have been rounding off their own stories. Varian and Brawl reunite with Valera, and even find a new companion in Thargus Anvilmar as they journey back across the sea to confront Lady Katrina Prestor and the false Varian who was rescued from Alcaz Island, while Medan and Merrill, now accompanied by Rhaegar Earthfury, are rejoined by Zabra Hex as they travel in pursuit of Stasia Fallshadow. Varian's story will play out much as it did canonically, however, for Medan, we needed to shift some things in order to allow for his story to run parallel in our timeline. His primary motivation in the comics was to rescue his mother from Cho'Gall, but in line with our rewrite, his main concern at the moment is trying to quiet the multiple vestiges of power within him so that he can properly study arcane magic as a mage. This leads to a chance encounter with the mysterious human sorcerer, Lord Victor Nefarious. Stasia, while still a member of the Twilight Hammer, will now work for Lord Nefarious, who has taken an interest in Medan, not so much as a chosen one, but as a biological anomaly, one that could be particularly useful to his current field of study and experimentation. The trick here is to link Medan to Nefarian in the same way that Varian is inevitably linked to Onyxia. Nefarian's schemes in vanilla centered around the creation of a chromatic dragonflight, and for that reason, Medan's unique physiology piques his interest. He offers to train Medan in unorthodox magics, and in exchange attempts to use Medan's blood as a catalyst to combine the biology of the 5 dragonflights, and to a limited extent, even manages to succeed. This will hopefully, in effect, replicate Medan's initial clash with Cho'Gall, but with Nefarian in his place, and with a more digestible reason for his involvement beyond him being the chosen child of 3 realms, destined to bring about the rise of the Great Pumpkin or whatever. And so, as Medan and his companions discover the depth of Nefarian's depraved experiments, and as Marshal Reginald Windsor leads Varian and his companions up the steps to confront Lady Prestor, we are at last poised to finally pay off the grand conspiracy we spent all of our dungeon video preparing. Welcome, at last, to patch 1.1.
Part 2, Assault on Blackrock Mountain.
Our plan is to unite the stories of Onyxia's Lair, Blackrock Depths, Blackrock Spire, Blackwing Lair, and Molten Core, all together in one enormous, legendary, popcorn-decimating conflict. I can't tell you who's more to blame, Tolkien or Shigeru Miyamoto, but all I know is that if you're not going to end your grand video game / fantasy epic in space, then you damn well better end it at a volcano. To wit, Blackrock Mountain is one hell of a volcano. Created during the War of the Three Hammers from the last-ditch efforts of the Dark Iron Dwarves, and claimed by the Shadow Council during the First War, the mountain serves as both a metaphorical and literal peak of the initial game's looming threats. Realistically, though, these instances are some of the biggest in the game, which means we're not going to be able to deep dive all of them. Blackrock Depths has been cited numerous times as the inspiration for modern mega dungeons, while Blackrock Spire is traditionally 2 dungeons split between its upper and lower segments. Any one of these instances could single-handedly hold up a patch on its own merits, but the idea of our vanilla story culminating in one legendary chaotic battle in the heights and the depths of the molten hellscape is about the most Warcraft thing that I can imagine, and all of these dungeons are a part of the Blackrock Mountain set piece. The one exception being Onyxia's Lair, who, despite being located on a different continent, is connected to the others largely by narrative proximity, with Nefarian being her brother and Ragnaros sharing the title of WoW's first raid boss with her. I did strongly consider moving her lair to the Eastern Kingdoms in order to tie her in more directly, but I really didn't like the idea of taking the Wormbog out of Dustwallow Marsh, and the separation makes the story a bit messy, but trying to clean it up gave me a Corehound-sized headache.
Ooh, 2 heads. Double headache.
So messy it will stay. Logosh and his friends, while attempting to rescue Thargus Andalmar's brother, rescue Marshal Reginald Windsor from the Dark Iron Dwarves in the Twilight Hammer. Windsor reveals to Logosh the truth of his identity and the identity of Katrana Prestor, and so we find ourselves, as mentioned above, climbing the steps of Stormwind's Keep to confront the Dark Lady and her imposter king. The scene plays out as we all remember it. Onyxia reveals herself. Windsor is killed. The false Varian shields Anduin from her attack, but Anduin is nevertheless kidnapped, and Logosh and his party fight a small army of Dragonspawn disguised as Stormwind guards while the Broodmother flees. Also, the Ash Knights are there because they just happen to be out buying bread or something when the quartet of gladiators marched through the streets and up the castle, and figured that they should be involved in whatever was going on. The story of the 2 Varians is very comic booky and ultimately kind of dumb, but in that magical way that only Blizzard really pulls off. Dumb as it is, I absolutely love it. I get hyped every time. The 2 halves of Stormwind's King are each gifted a magical Night Elven blade, Shalator and Elamane, and the whole of the party travels across the sea to confront and slay Onyxia once and for all. The Ash Knights, Brol, Valera, Thargus, Jaina, and the 2 Varians, and presumably a healthy number of you Alliance players out there listening, kick down Onyxia's front door and barge in, ready to save the prince.
Odd groups, go to left. Even groups, go right. And watch the fucking tail.
They succeed, taking the head of the dragon formerly known as Lady Prestor, after she accidentally remerges the 2 King Varians with her magical breath. Somehow.
And don't forget, this also merged their 2 swords into the blade Charlemagne. Somehow.
While Varian manages to get the final blow, the trauma of his reunification leaves him weakened and put him out of commission for a while.
Yeah, until we meet Arthas again.
And Onyxia, with her dying breath, taunts the Alliance about the horrors that await them in Blackrock Mountain. Meanwhile! Thrall's agents, who have been searching for answers ever since the events of Ragefire Chasm, at last discover the base of operations for the new Shadow Council, Blackrock Spire. Ruled by the 2 sons of the Old Horde's first ever war chief, Rend and Maim Blackhand, the Spire serves as the home for the Dark Horde, a coalition of old orc clans who reject Thrall's new peaceful ways and still hold with the many virtues of pillaging and demon worship. The Blackrock clan, reclaimed by Rend, the Blacktooth Grin clan, still run by Maim, the Dragonmaw clan, now ruled by the son of Nekrosh, Skullcrusher, the Burning Blade clan, the Bone Chewer clan, the Firegut Ogres, and the Smolderthorn Trolls, mass their forces within the Volcanic Spire, while the Warlocks of the Shadow Council, and, secretly, the new Chromatic Dragonflight, pull the strings and warp their minds. Thrall refuses to allow his people to backslide into savagery or slavery, and so declares war on this new Dark Horde. A force led by Cairn Bloodhoof and accompanied by Etrig and Varrock Sarfang, 2 former lieutenants of the Blackrock clan from the Old Horde, transport a small army to the foot of Blackrock Mountain, including the Thunderslayers, and begin to lay siege to the dwarven-built orc-infested stronghold. Here the Slayers get to wage war alongside 3 of the Horde's greatest warriors as they climb the twisting floors of Blackrock Spire.
Side note, it's awesome, but we totally don't have time for it. So pretend we mention an aside about the Veiled Blade.
Meanwhile, as the Horde climbs higher, the Alliance delve deeper. Upon the death of Onyxia and the return of her head to Stormwind, the Alliance receives word that the Dark Iron Dwarves, ancient enemies of the Bronzebeard and the Wildhammers, have launched an attack on Ironforge. Though driven off, the attack ultimately led to the kidnapping of King Magni Bronzebeard's only child, Moira, by the leader of the Dark Irons, Emperor Dagran Tharazan. King Magni Bronzebeard and his brother Bran, accompanied by the High Tinker Gelwin Mekator, rally the Alliance and in a fury storm the halls of Blackrock Depths in the Shadowforge City, where they are met with not only Dark Irons, but the representatives of the Twilight Hammer cult. The Battle of Blackrock Mountain rages in the depths and in the heights. Funnily enough, massive though these dungeons are, they're unusually sparse when it comes to lore-significant bosses. The Thunderslayers and the Horde army battle a very literal manifestation of their dark past and explore the nature of corruption through the remnants of the Shadow Council juxtaposed with Nefarian and his chromatic abominations. At the top, they encounter the brothers, Rend and Maim. In the canon, these 2 were considered a duo, or a buddy comedy if you asked Ogrim Doomhammer, but in the Prime timeline, Maim is unceremoniously killed off-screen. I think there's a lot of potential for the idea of the 2 war chiefs of the Dark Horde, and so they will remain. Rend from atop the chromatic drake Glyth, and Maim atop the 2-headed monster Chromagus. The story of the Dark Horde is ultimately a tragic one, so blinded by the lies and traditions of the past, the brothers, who once defied the likes of Gul'dan, Ner'zhul, and even Doomhammer himself, end up trading one Dark Master for another by coming under the sway of Nefarian. Meanwhile, as the Ash Knights and the Alliance army pushed deeper under the mountain, they are greeted with the true reality of the Dark Iron's misery and enslavement to the elementals of fire. Pushed to desperate measures during the War of the Three Hammers a century ago, their entire people have been trapped in the dark bargains of their forebears, and it has warped them into monsters of pain and cruelty. In the deepest levels of Shadowforge City, the Ash Knights finally confront Dagran Tharazan, but as the battle begins, they are shocked to find Moira Bronzebeard fighting by his side against them. Chalking it up to mind control, the Dark Thane is slain and the princess is rescued, only for her to reveal that she and Dagran have already been married.
And got busy!
And that she was now with child. A fate that causes old Magni to lament that even in death, his old enemy Dagran had still managed to find a way to claim victory. Following the death of the Blackhand brothers, the Horde army encounters Merrill, Rhaegar, Zabra, and Medan at the top of the spire, ascending into the mountain's upper peak. The group tells the Horde the story of Victor Nefarious and his disgusting experiments at the high peak of the mountain, which he calls Blackwing Lair. A tide of chromatic dragons flow from inside, and more they are joined by the less feral black dragons and their kin. An unexpected ally in the form of the red dragon Valestraz arrives and helps break the initial siege before heading deeper into the lair on his own. The Horde take a moment to regroup. Recognizing the danger and the real threat that Nefarian poses, they begin to formulate a detailed plan. A plan that will capitalize on the strength and the cunning of each individual member.
Leroy Jenkins!
Only for a seemingly mad human paladin to burst from the spire and charge headforce into Blackwing Lair. And so, the Thunderslayers charge in after. Headfirst into the fray alongside Medan and his group to stem the tide of the unnatural draconic chimeras. During the fight, in the presence of his three companions, Merrill, Rhaegar, and Zabra, Medan can feel his own magic behaving erratically. His arcane spells flicker or cause unintended consequences. As an aside, I think it would be kind of cool to add a bonus raid boss here that Medan accidentally summons while trying to get his magic under control. A feral earth elemental driven mad by Medan's multitude of magical mishigas. Something like that. But moving on. A few rooms in, the Slayers and Medan encounter Valestras again, now corrupted by some foul treachery on the part of Nefarian. The party is forced to put him down, but during that battle, Medan takes note of the different weaves of magic. He can feel the euphoria of Merrill's arcane spells, the comforting warmth of Zabra's light, and the unrestrained power of the elementals under Rhaegar. Even the life magic coming from the corrupted Valestras, so boundless and chaotic, but with infinite potential and creativity. For the briefest moments, he's granted an insight into the true nature of magic, an epiphany that allows him to see the cosmology, just for an instant, and the revelation is so vast that he's left incapacitated and unable to cast spells of any kind. Once Valestras is slain, the party comes face to face with Victor Nefarious, who taunts Medan, thanking him for all he contributed to his research, and then reveals himself to be no less than the Black Dragon Nefarian, the son of Deathwing and the brother of Onyxia. In keeping with our rebranding of him, Medan is pretty useless in this fight. The Thunderslayers and the rest of his party push Nefarian into a corner, only for the worm to activate the magical traps installed within his lair. As a last-ditch Hail Mary, Medan rushes Nefarian with a simple axe, allowing himself to be swallowed by diving into the dragon's toothy maw, only to then carve his way back out through his throat. With Nefarian's demise, the conspiracy of the Black Dragonflight comes to an end, and the influence of the Black Dragons as a whole is greatly diminished. For just one brief moment, the chaos of Blackrock Mountain goes still and everything goes quiet.
And then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
With the forces of the Dragon Lord no longer directing their efforts in the war against the fire elementals, the flames beneath the earth begin to rise. Moira directs the Alliance to the heart of the mountain. Here in the deeps, the entrance to the elemental plane of fire had grown so dangerously thin that powerful elementals were able to manifest themselves in Azeroth herself, the place the Dark Irons refer to as the Molten Core. As the churning molten heart of Blackrock Mountain begins to erupt, spewing forth fire elementals in every direction, the Knights of the Lost Ashes charge into the plane of fire from Blackrock depths, while the Thunderslayers, watching from high atop the rim of the caldera, feel the entire mountain shift beneath them. The shamans of the Horde, keyed into the very elements of the mountain, realize that it will be no mere elemental that bursts forth from the fire plane, but the Fire Lord himself, Ragnaros. Facing this revelation, the Thunderslayers immediately do the only reasonable thing available to them. They take a running leap from the cliffs of Blackwing Lair and hurl themselves into the open mouth of the volcano, plunging from the mountain's peak all the way down into the flames of the molten core.
Cast slow fall!
When I think of an expansion, one of the features I think most about is its defining villain, which doesn't always have to be the final boss. Illidan, for example, probably defines the Burning Crusade, even though he's dealt with in the first raid patch, while I would argue that Gul'dan is the defining villain of Warlords of Draenor, and we don't even fight him in that expansion. Vanilla is a special case, and there's an argument to be made for a lot of different raid bosses, but personally, I'll always argue for Ragnaros as the most iconic villain of classic WoW.
Yo, what up, G? let me tell you about MC.
The Thunderslayers and the Ash Knights fight their greatest battle yet within the Molten Core. The servants of the Fire Lord are brutal and uncontrollable, just like the worst aspects of fire. The two guilds receive backup from their various allies in Blackrock Mountain, particularly Magni Bronzebeard and Karen Bloodhoof, for no other reason than I like seeing these characters kick ass, and they rarely get a chance to do so. Even the Hydraxian Waterlords, led by the water elemental Duke Hydraxis, appear to lend their aid against the forces of the Firelands. Neptulon is, after all, nothing if not petty. The Horde and the Alliance forces storm separately into Molten Core, taking down different bosses on their run. The Ash Knights get caught up in a fight between the elementals Gar and Baron Geddon, while the Thunderslayers bring down the Titanic Magmadar and Golemag in the true spirit of the Thunderlord clan. Lucifron, Gehennis, Shazra, the Sulfuran Harbinger. One by one, the Salamanders fall to the two parties, until at last they arrive before Major Domo Executus, who has already begun the final ritual to bring Ragnaros into our world. The Knights and the Slayers take note of one another, and, just for a moment, raise their weapons. But then the moment ends, and understanding passes between Jorn and Magus. The two turn from one another to face down the Major Domo, and in turn, their allies follow, to the approval of some and to the disapproval of others. On the verge of death, Executus begs for his life and summons Ragnaros to face the champions. The Fire Lord, outraged at being summoned before he could amass his full power, executes Executus before our very eyes, before raising his mighty molten hammer against us, the mortal champions of Azeroth. What follows is one of the premier battles in World of Warcraft history. The heroes of the Horde and the adventurers of the Alliance bring down one of the primordial forces of chaos that once shaped Azeroth herself, a being who had battled both the Titans and the Old Gods, summoned in a weaker state to be sure, but nevertheless one of the mightiest beings to have ever roamed our world, is brought low and banished by the combined might of the Alliance and the Horde. The moment of cooperation is short-lived. With the death of the Fire Lord, the Molten Core begins to collapse. The two guilds flee in different directions. No words are exchanged, only a nod between our paladin and our shaman. The Ash Knights leave first, Dexter taking count of two particularly powerful shards of elemental crystal they collected during their battles with Gar and Geddon, while Magus, before legging it with the rest of her guild, lays a claim on the extinguished but ever smoldering core of the banished Firelord's hammer. And with that, the introductory story of World of Warcraft draws to a close. Our 6 heroic plotlines have all converged, our 8 heroes have all found one another, and founded 2 guilds, comprised of heroes from all walks of life.
And even unlife.
The masterminds behind the conspiracy and strife, the twin dragons, Nefarian and Onyxia, are both slain and their heads displayed in Orgrimmar and Stormwind respectively. The Dark Iron clan becomes scattered and leaderless, while the dark legacy of the old Horde is finally put to rest. Plus, with Ragnaros banished back to the Firelands, the elementals on Azeroth again begin to find a relative peace. Before finishing up here, I should mention my intention for legendary weapons. There's a sparse handful of these in the game, even in modern WoW, and every single one of them is iconic. When possible, I'd like to add small quest lines to those that don't already have them. For instance, in this case, I think Magus and Shaka would, after realizing the power of the shards taken from the Firelord, meet with Thrall and maybe Muln Earthfury and attempt to commune with the chaotic elemental fire within. I find it fitting for Shaka to be the one to pull off the re-enchantment, and Magus Coldeye, last of the Thunderlords, will be the first of our characters to take up a legendary weapon, Sulfuris, Hand of Ragnaros, now ever burning with the rage of the Firelands. Her new weapon in hand, she returns to the Thunderslayer's den in the Drag, while across the sea, the Ash Knights finally make their way back to their own town hall in Old Town.
We gotta come up with a name for these buildings at some point.
True that. And if any of you can think of some good guild hall names, let us know down below. Nevertheless, here, in that moment of peace, is where we're going to end the video today. However, unlike the ending of our previous videos, I'll rein in my particular proclivity to wax poetic until we truly clear all of Vanilla's raids. The cutoff point here makes the most sense for our narrative. Alterac and Blackrock represent the culmination of the twin themes we've been presenting in Vanilla thus far, and in their own way represent resolutions, whereas the following 5 patches, or chapters, represent the foreshadowing for the stories to come, while still presenting proper narratives in their own right. It's thematically appropriate to take a breather here, but we'll start up again right where we left off in the next video. I'll be honest, it feels good to finish out our first proper plotline, and I imagine it will feel even better to finally finish out Vanilla as a whole in the next video. Be back for that next time. Hargan.
At least Hargan has chicken. Smash.
We'll see you sooner than soon.